He did Gavin Newsom's best and his worst interview. He asked George W. Bush if he was smart enough to be president and confronted Dick Cheney on gay rights. I'm talking about San Francisco political reporter Hank Plante. In this episode of Life After News, we have a wide-ranging conversation, including those topics covering the AIDS epidemic from ground zero, the future of local news, and what we both love about our lives after news in Palm Springs. All right, Hank Plante, nice to meet you. I've heard about you for years. You've had a long, storied career, and welcome to the show.
Thanks. Likewise, Jason, you have a great career yourself and a great reputation in LA and elsewhere. So I'm glad to be with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, so you grew up in the Midwest, but you had a long, successful career in California, first at KHJ, which I don't think a lot of people know. A few years after you left, became KCAL, which is a
Yeah.
station I worked at.
Oh, yeah. I loved it. News director. I was sitting at my desk in Minneapolis, if you want to hear this. Phone rang. I was working as a reporter in Minneapolis, and I was trying to get out of Minneapolis. And the phone rang, and woman said, my name is Stephanie Brady. I'm the news director at KHJ in Los Angeles. Have you ever thought about anchoring the news in Los Angeles? And I said, no. I'm a reporter in Minneapolis. And she said, well, I've seen your stuff on the satellite and I've got a noon anchor opening. I'd like to talk to you about it. And she changed my life. She brought me to California and it was wonderful. And she was wonderful.
That's a great story. Yeah, one phone call, and I love you said they saw you on the satellite.
Yeah,
That's
right. That's right.
that's
That's
a
right.
little telling that we know what
Yes,
that
it
is.
is. Yes, it is. Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's right.
what made you go to San Francisco? You went to CBS in San Francisco, KPIX, and you were there for a very long time.
25 years in San Francisco. That was my dream job. Well, what happened was I was the noon anchor in LA. And a guy offered me the main anchor job in Houston. And I thought, yeah, I'll give it a try. And I could be happy anywhere. So I moved to Houston. I was not happy. And from day one, I thought, what have I done? I got to get back to California. So it took me 2.5 years, but I got an agent who was based in San Francisco. I said, get me back there. And that happened. And then I had really the best part of my career, 25 years at KPIX, which is the CBS station in San Francisco.
A great legacy TV station for sure.
Yeah.
And you saw San Francisco and the whole Bay Area, I'm sure, changed a lot over that 25 years.
Yeah, I covered two dot-com rises and two dot-com crashes and AIDS, of course, which came along, and San Francisco was ground zero. I was openly gay. I am openly gay, so they let me run with that story. That's the work that I'm really proudest of in
Uh-huh.
my career. And of course, it's an amazing place. I mean, it's an amazing news town. I mean, there's no coincidence that, I mean, Jason, you know California, but it's kind of interesting to me that in recent years, most of the political leadership of the state has come from San Francisco, not from much larger LA, which has more votes. And I really think that's telling of what kind of political leaders the Bay Area produces. They're just sharper and better and smarter. And I'm sorry, that's how I feel. And I also think that it's because of the political press, which is more prevalent up north. And if you can survive political reporters in San Francisco, I mean, that's trial by fire. And so, look, I mean, at one point, San Francisco had produced a governor, lieutenant governor, both members, both U.S. senators, a speaker of the House, and then vice president of the United States, speaker of the Assembly, and president of the state Senate, all from that little area. I mean, I rest my case.
Yeah, no, I think you're 100% right. I mean, Angelenos were definitely almost apolitical in some ways. So we definitely, and anybody can stand up to Hank Plante, suffer through, get through that is definitely going to be a good leader.
When I worked when I was working, we used to say the only way to get your candidate covered in LA was to put them in a white Bronco and put them on the freeway.
That's not untrue or unfair for sure. You had a very interesting interview with Gavin Newsom in November of 2009 that resurfaced recently, and I went back and I watched it, and it was you were good, and you didn't put up with him, and you didn't give him any slack, but he was not happy.
He used to be a lot more thin-skinned than he is today. I think he's gotten better and toughened up. I think that marriage has softened him up in a good way and made him more human. But that was a case where Gavin was mayor
Uh-huh.
and he disappeared for several days. Nobody knew where he was. What had happened was it was his first attempt to run for governor, and Jerry Brown got in the race. And it was very clear that Gavin wasn't going anywhere. And so Gavin got pouty and disappeared. As it turns out, he went to Hawaii and didn't tell anybody for like 3 or 4 days. And well, you don't do that. You're a big city mayor. He came back and he did a series of interviews with local reporters about the city budget. And so I was called in to be one of the reporters to do the interview. I was not going to talk about the city budget. I was going to ask him, where have you been? And how can you do this? How can you get away with this? And he was being very obstinate, and it wasn't his best moment. I think it was his worst interview on camera because he just dug in his heels. And it really shows you, Jason, that, and if there are any politicians watching this, the person being interviewed really can control the interview by their tone and their intention. I mean, the essence of communication is intention. How are you coming across? Are you being a jerk? Are you being a nice guy, a nice woman? I mean, he could have come out and he could have said, hey, look, I was upset. I lost the governor's race. And yeah, I should have let the staff know. Totally my fault. Next question. He didn't. He dug in his heels and he was really a jerk about it.
Oh, he was spoiling from a fight from the very beginning. It looked
Yeah.
like.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. It was his worst. I think it was his worst interview on camera. I will say I also did what I think was his best interview ever on camera. Before that, when he had had an affair with his one of his secretaries, if you remember that story,
Uh-huh.
and he came out, he acknowledged it, and he thought that was going to be it. And I went to his family. I went to his family, and I said, I respect him for being honest, but that's not going to cut it. He's going to have to give an interview and talk about this. All he has to do is one, because then he can say, I've already talked about that. But he's got to do one, and you got to do it with me because I respect him, and so he did that interview with me, and I asked him a lot of very blunt questions, which including, how could you be so stupid? Your secretary? And I think it was his political advisor. His political advisor told me it's the best interview he's ever done.
That's
He
so
was
you've known.
honest. He was forthcoming. His guard was down. He messed up. He felt badly about it. And all of that came through. So I think I did his best interview and his worst interview.
Oh, that's good. That's fair. So you've known him for a very long time.
Known him since before he was elected.
So in the last 15 years since that interview, or almost 16 years since that interview, how do you think he's aged and matured, or has he aged and matured?
He has aged and matured. I think that he was a good mayor. People think this is personal, Jason. It's not personal. I always liked the guy. I'm just doing my job. If I'm asking tough questions, I think he was a good mayor. I think he's been a good governor. The state, I mean, California is almost ungovernable. Come on, it's 40 million people. Good God, where do you start? Wildfires, homeless, money problems. I mean, if you could just keep us moving forward, you're doing a good job. I think he's done a good job. So I'm not sure how else to answer that. How this will play in his obvious presidential run, we could talk about that if you want.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think? Of what he's doing? His strategy so far. I mean, he's definitely taken an aggressive strategy.
I think it's about time, and I wish other Democrats would do it, because all I hear is how weak the Democrats look nationally. I mean, they just snatched defeat out of the jaws of victory. Last week, they had such a good week with the election, and this week they completely caved to Trump. I don't care how you want to dress it up, but I mean, there goes that. You have Chuck Schumer looking over his half glasses saying, I'm very disturbed. Hakeem Jeffries, who doesn't ever say anything, he never says anything. And then you have Newsom, who is playing a tough game. I wish more Democrats were as tough as he is.
So you've interviewed a lot of presidents and a lot of politicians. Who are your standouts?
Obama, I think, had the most heart, and was a really genuinely decent man. I really liked him a lot. Bill Clinton, I think, was the smartest, and I think he was the smartest president. And the result was we had 8 years of peace and prosperity, in case people have forgotten. I actually liked George W. Bush very, very much, and I liked the wife even more, Laura. Uh, I mean, I asked George Bush one of the most obnoxious questions I've ever asked anybody in my life. Uh, and I said to him, this was at the end of the interview, not at the beginning. I said at the end of an interview, I have to ask you this question, and I don't mean any disrespect by it, but there are people who think you're just not bright enough to be president. And he did a double take and didn't say anything. I said, well, what do you say to them? And he said, well, I would tell them, come on down to Texas and see the job we've done. Now, you'd think he would have been upset. The interview ended then, and he said, should hang around for a minute. And he shooed away the Secret Service. And I thought, here we go. And he said, tell me a little about the Bay Area. Tell me about Silicon Valley. And he kind of schmoozed me, but I think he respected me. And he thought this was an opportunity to talk to somebody who knew that market, which was important. Silicon Valley is very, very important to these people. And we had a really pleasant conversation for a long time. Not the reaction I expected after asking a pretty obnoxious question. So I like the
That is
guy. I
that is
like the
pretty
guy.
bold.
Yeah.
That's funny. You talked to Dick Cheney. You interviewed Dick Cheney about gay rights too.
Well, yeah, I was on the plane. I think I was the first reporter to ask about his lesbian daughter.
Uh-huh.
And I wasn't being inappropriate. She was part of the campaign.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I mean, I think kids are off guard, but she was
Well,
being
she was an
paid.
adult.
She was an adult. Well, I still think children are,
Okay.
I mean, unless they're Hunter Biden and they're up to shenanigans. But anyway, I was on the plane with him, and I was, again, it was not the first question in the interview, but it was when he was running for vice president. And I said to him, look, you're running on a platform that would deny your own daughter and her partner protection from discrimination and housing. And the wife was sitting across the aisle from us, and the wife, Lynn, leaned over and looked at me like this. I thought the oxygen was going to go out of the cabin. And she was looking daggers at me, and he just looked at me and said, well, I would say I have two beautiful daughters, and I respect them both. And I said, all right, I respect you on that, but what about the platform? And he said, well, I just don't approve of discrimination. But, sometimes, Jason, as you know, it's not the answer that matters, it's the question.
Uh-huh.
I mean, even if they don't have an answer, he wasn't going to get away with that and not be asked about it, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Yep. That's good. That was good. So let's go back now. You were one of the first reporters to actually cover the AIDS crisis in San Francisco. And were you out then, or did you come out during that process?
I was out then, fortunately.
Okay.
I had been a newspaper reporter back in DC, and I came out then fairly early in my career as a newspaper reporter. And so by the time I became a television reporter, which was in 78, I was already out. And so, really, one of the good fortune things that happened to me was by the time I got to San Francisco and was covering AIDS, I was out and I knew my craft. I knew how to do it. And I was working for a great TV station that just let me run with it. Uh, and as I say, it's the work that I'm proudest of in my career because it was a time, I mean, in the 80s, you remember the government wasn't talking about it.
Mhm.
Reagan wasn't talking about it. I mean, I stood in front of Ronald Reagan when he said the word AIDS for the first time, and that was in 87, 6 years into the epidemic. And I made a note that night in my reporter's notebook that when he said that word for the first time, 23,000 Americans had already died from the disease. So about we were going on TV every night talking about it, telling people how not to get it, what sex practices to not do, what drugs were working and not working, cases of discrimination, people being fired, kicked out of their apartments. I was on it for 15 years, really from 81 when the AIDS virus was first reported, through 96 when protease inhibitors came along. That was, I mean, it was a beat. It was my beat.
I mean, I don't know that young people, even young gay people, really understand what it was like, particularly in those early days. Can
You
you
are
explain?
so right. You are so right. And let me tell you how I know you're right. I was in a film, uh, a documentary about AIDS called 5B, about Ward 5B, which was the first AIDS ward in the nation at San Francisco General. So this film came out just before COVID. It was a theatrical film. It was a big budget movie, documentary. It was mostly about the nurses who staffed Ward 5B, but they wanted a reporter who had covered it, and they used a lot of my old video in it. And so I was in the film. Well, as it turns out, we won the first prize at the Cannes Film Festival with this movie. And so the movie studio was thrilled. And so they flew us around the country, me and some of the nurses, to be on, to show the film and to be on panels. So I would go into a theater with these handful of nurses, with the director, the editor. They'd show the movie, and I'd be on a panel with a live audience in the theaters right before COVID. Uh, Largely gay audience because of the subject matter. And that's how I know you're right. Because those kids, those young people in the audience, they didn't have a clue. They did not have a clue how bad AIDS was. And incidentally, they didn't have a clue how tough it was being gay. Forget
Yeah,
AIDS. They didn't have a clue what it was like to be fired from a job, to have to be closeted at work, to have to watch your pronouns, to have to lie on Monday morning when somebody said, "What do you do this weekend?" Well, we went to the theater. I went to the movies, that kind of stuff that people had to do. They were completely ignorant of it.
it's true. I mean, I wasn't really out in my first job. I was sort of out by the end of it to some people, but let's kind of recreate the uncertainty in the early days of the AIDS crisis must have been the worst part of it. It's just not knowing what to believe or how to deal with it.
Nobody knew anything. Nobody knew how it was spread, which is why the nurses were such heroes. They were caring for these patients, not knowing how it was spread, not knowing if they were going to bring it home to their families, their partners, their wives, or kids. And they showed up for work anyway. I mean, what heroes, really. I love these people. Uh, but yeah, nobody knew how it was spread. You would see someone on the street and they looked thin, and you would hear 10 days later they were dead. Uh, there was case after case of people being kicked out of their apartments, even if they were just gay, because even if they didn't look ill, landlords just didn't want gay people in there. And this was really happening. There was a company in San Francisco. I won't name it, but they had one of the employees died of AIDS. They took his desk out to the parking lot and burned it. I mean, this stuff was happening routinely. I'm not even sure what else to say about it. And of course, desperate for information and for treatment. And I mean, thank heavens ACT UP came along and lit a fire under the government. Even Dr. Fauci says there was definitely a time before ACT UP and after ACT UP. I mean, ACT UP really, really did light a fire under the NIH and the FDA to look harder for treatments.
Mhm. You said in an interview I saw that your reporting was an opportunity for you to channel your grief and your anger into it and to do something. Tell us
Yeah,
what you mean by that.
well, I think every gay man, or woman my age was dealing with losing maybe all their friends. maybe most of their friends. In my case, it was most of my gay friends who were my age. And uh, uh, I still think that we as a community have a kind of PTSD that we have never had a national conversation about. You don't lose all your friends at that age and not have it affect you. I mean, it is down there inside all of us. Some of us move away and we go to places like Palm Springs to get away from the ghosts. Didn't my friends deserve to have the last 40 years like I did? I think you have to pay a price. And I mean, in my case, it's been continued to try to report on the community, the gay community in general, and try to keep giving back. I know a lot of friends who do volunteer work here at the Desert Age Project and in straight organizations too. But I mean, we have been given a gift because this was the luck of the draw. I mean, who got it and who didn't, and then when you got it and when you didn't, when the drugs came along, and were you well enough to survive that next, little period of time when the drugs were working?
Did you worked with Project Open Hand too? Did you?
I was on the board of Project Open Hand. Yeah,
I was on
yeah.
the board of Project Angel Food in Los Angeles
Oh, is
until
that right?
recently. Yeah,
Yeah, it's fantastic.
that's fantastic organizations that are
It is.
interesting because they've evolved now into something completely different than what they started as. Yeah,
Well, yeah, and that's happened. I mean, look at Desert Age Project was no longer Desert Age Project; it's DAP, and they're really a healthcare agency now that serves this whole Coachella Valley. But I'm glad they're evolving and using the experience they had to do a broader vision.
we both live in Palm Springs. When did you and your husband first start coming out here?
I was here in the '80s once, and it was dead, man. Oh, it was wow, wow. Um, and then I have to think for a second, but in like 2000, the year 2000, 2001, I had a friend who had a house here. And she said, "Have you been there lately?" And I said, "No." And she said, "You really ought to check it out." So I had, working as a TV reporter is really hard, right? So, I mean, I was working my butt off
Yes,
in San Francisco. I mean, you're running all day long.
all day
And
long.
it's, Jason, well, your job, I can't imagine. You were doing how many live hours of television every day? Oh my God.
Yeah,
Uh, More than any place in America.
yeah, at a time. Yes.
And plus just streaming. So this is really hard work. So I had a week off. My husband was also working very hard, but he did not have any time off. So I came down. I stayed in this woman's house here. It wasn't even that nice a house. Uh, and I just thought this is fantastic. It was April, which is a great time of year. I went to El Mirasol and Sherman's and just sat by the pool. And I called up my husband. I said, "You got to see this place. There's something happening here." And at that point, we had started to have conversations about the next chapter for us. And so he came down. We both came down a little while after that, and we started looking for houses. And it was not that expensive then.
Hmm.
So
So
yeah,
you retired in 2010. Did you move to Palm Springs after that?
yeah. We bought a house here in like a year or two after the period I just described. So it was a vacation house for 8 years. We weren't quite sure if this was gonna be the retirement place, but we sure liked coming here. I
Uh-huh.
would come down here and exhale. And, so then we renovated the house here and still we're living and working in San Francisco, and it just kinda took on a life of its own, the move. When something is easy,
Uh,
it's an indication that this was meant to be. You don't have to work that hard at it when it just felt like it was supposed to happen. So I retired then, and my husband retired then, and we left San Francisco on a Friday, and we're here on a Monday.
wow.
Yeah,
So you're fully here.
yeah, hmm
Do you miss San
yeah.
Francisco?
I do. A lot of what I miss isn't there anymore. A lot of the people I miss aren't there anymore. Um, and But yeah, we go back. I was there last month. It was great, great to be back. Saw some friends. hmm
What's your favorite thing about San Francisco?
The culture of creativity.
Oh.
more than the beauty of the place. There is a reason Silicon Valley happened there. And I think it goes back to those crazy gold miners. They were nuts. Uh, and it's been nuts. And the city has been open to the crazies. Steve Jobs didn't wear shoes. His first job didn't shower. Okay. I mean, that's what that place is like and was like. And if you had a good idea, and still, if you have a good idea, you can get funding. Unlike a place like Boston, where your grandparents have to be from there to get in to see the banker. In San Francisco, I mean, all it matters is the idea, and they don't care, what you're wearing, who you're sleeping with, and that's been the case, really. And it's the reason. I mean, we saw this with the Barbary Coast, the beatniks in the 50s, the hippies in the 60s, the gay liberation. I mean, there's a reason all this happened there. There is a culture of creativity there. Now we're seeing it with AI. That place is booming. I mean, and this recovery is happening. I saw it last month. I mean, rents are up, home sales are up, prices are up. Union Square was packed. They just had a convention of 50,000 people last month up there. So, and AI is all there,
Yeah.
all of it, including the money. So, there's a reason that it all happens there. So that's a long answer, but I
No,
think there's a book. I think there's a book in it.
oh, that's interesting. What are you working on now?
Uh, you know, um, Not a lot. I do a little bit of TV for my old TV station, a little bit here in Palm Springs, not so much here anymore. I was on in San Francisco last week when Pelosi announced that she
Oh,
was going to not run again. I write a few columns. I do some volunteer work. I got pretty active here in Palm Springs. I was on the editorial board of the newspaper here for 5 years. Wrote columns for the local paper here. I do a lot of volunteer work. I was MC parades, city
oh.
council debates, you name it, that kind of thing. Most of what I do is for free, so it's made me extremely popular.
What nonprofits do you support?
Uh, is journalism a nonprofit? It feels like
Well,
it.
yeah, we'll see.
I like the Coachella Valley Journalism Foundation
Oh,
a
I just joined
lot.
their board.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's a
Yeah,
great group.
yeah.
And I emceed their first dinner, which was a year and a half ago. Um, and they're really great people. I like them a lot.
It really
Yeah.
is. It's interesting to see how they've grown already in the next few, and then kind of where we're going to grow it and support local journalism here in the Coachella Valley.
Yeah, well, I think that's the future. I mean, local journalism, I think, is the future. I don't know how you feel about it. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts.
I agree. I think it's more important than ever. Grassroots level, somebody's got to cover the city council meetings and the school board meetings. And that was my first job. I worked at a weekly newspaper in Arkansas, and every month I had to go cover the school board meeting. And I didn't really think about the importance of it then either, but it was important.
My first job was also a weekly newspaper. I was a copy boy at the Washington Post right out of college. I was very lucky. And after 2.5 years working there, I fell in love with journalism. And I went to one of the editors and I said, I want to be one of these reporters. How do I do that? And he said, well, you don't start here, obviously, but there's a chain of weekly newspapers out in the DC suburbs. And we sometimes hire people away from there after they've gotten some experience. Why don't you see if you can get a job there? In fact, I know there's an opening because we just hired a kid from there named Bob Woodward. Why don't you see if you can get his job? So I did. I got Woodward's job and was trained by the same crusty old SOB editor. And that's where I fell in love with local journalism. And and I mean, these days where journalism is going, I think is more and more local because it's going into niche journalism anyway, right? I mean, the algorithms are picking what I look at when I log on in the morning. And so I think local journalism has a good future if they can figure out how to pay for it.
That's what I was going to say. So we can figure out how to pay for it,
Well, that's
to
the hard
fund it.
part. That's
Yeah.
the hard part, and that's the hard part across the board. It's the hard part at the network level. I mean, a typical network 30-second spot will bring in anywhere between 200,000 to $1 million, depending on the show. Well, you know how many clicks that takes to
Uh-huh.
make $200,000? Nobody's figured this out yet.
No,
Uh,
no one's not at all. It's gonna
yeah,
be interesting to see where it goes.
yeah, yeah.
So, what do you love about Palm Springs?
I like the pace.
Nice.
I love how beautiful it is. I love the fact that it's a small town, but there's a lot of cool stuff to do. Um, my husband and I mean, we wanted to try a small town after San Francisco, but the trouble is, and we looked around, Carmel, Sonoma, whatever. Most small towns aren't very cool, and there's not a lot to do. I mean, they're nice, and you can park everywhere, but this is unusual. I mean, I could do something every night of the week here,
Uh-huh.
and great restaurants, lots of fun activities. I mean, we had the Veterans Parade, and 2 days later, the Pride Parade. We're coming up on Modernism Week, the film festival, you name it. So it's a very I've never seen anything quite like this, to have this combo of 46,000 people, but there's always something happening. I also am glad that it's so gay friendly.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I'm at the age in life where I don't want to be stared at when I walk into a restaurant with my husband. Sorry,
It's
you
true.
know.
I agree with
Yeah.
all of that. What are your go-to places? Where do you like to go?
We go out to dinner a lot, and I leased a car a few years ago, and I came home and I said to my husband, "They're only giving me 7,500 miles a year on the lease," and he said, "What do you care? You only go to Sherman's." True story,
That's funny.
and he was right. He was right.
So just Sherman's, that's the only place you go?
I just Sherman's, yeah.
Thank you so much, Hank, for spending some time with us. I appreciate it, and it's nice to get to know you a little bit. Hopefully,
It's a
see you
pleasure.
out in the flesh in town.
I hope so. All right, thanks, Jason. I appreciate it.
Hank mentioned the Coachella Valley Journalism Foundation. As I said, I joined that board recently. So next week, my guest is Randy Lovely, who's the president of the foundation. He's also a journalist and executive with Gannett and its newspapers for many years. We have a great conversation about the future of local news and what that looks like and what that means and how you can certainly help with that. If you believe in local news, give us good ratings, reviews, and share with a friend. Until next time.